What's going on, friends? Hope you're doing well. Andy Abramson just jumping on for a minute here. Got Megan. How you doing? Oh, sorry, people are texting me. Got my dinging going on here. Let me turn that down a little bit. Hope you're having a good start to another week. Lots of fun stuff. Megan, I think I'm going to have to give you an award for you're usually the first one on and you're always on. So you definitely will get the award along the way. So hopefully you can hear me well. Hopefully recording's going, sounds good. Looks like the video's going well. We'll give it another minute or two here. Jump in. Hey, Megan. Good. You can hear me. That's good. Give it another couple minutes here. We're gonna jump in for probably maybe 20 minutes or so, maybe 15. Nothing super long. Just wanted to jump on for a couple minutes here today and go over a training with you here in a couple minutes. So hopefully things are going well. I'm actually getting ready. Next week I get to head out and go to Africa. My daughter Macy and I are heading out to Africa for 2.5 weeks. Get a chance to do some teaching for some university leaders, some training in Uganda. And then we'll head down to Kenya and spend a good 8 days, I think, down in Kenya. I'm meeting with some different church leaders, talking about engaging university campuses. So that's going to be super, super fun. Yep, you are the winner, Megan. You're the winner. Okay, let's jump in. We got the recording going on here. We know several of you be busy, but you'll be able to catch the recording along the way. So let me kind of set this up. First of all, a couple tests that we're doing along the way. We got some potential calls happening for some different groups of you that are connected to us. So one of the things that we're going to do over the course of the rest of the year is just we're going to jump on occasionally and do a quick 15-minute snapshot, 20-minute snapshot of a training, a framework, something that we're utilizing with leaders. So that's going to be happening. We're also going to be doing, if you're in our full coaching process, we're going to be doing what we call office hours. And office hours are a way just to jump on, and it's not even be webinar format. It's going to be just like Zoom format, utilizing Circle. So we'll all jump on a call together. We're going to be open for, a couple hours and just come and go as you want, talk about ministry, help you kind of process dialogue, even as you're going through some of the coaching material and processes, as we just kind of help you think through that as well. And then something else, there was going to be something else in terms of calls. Oh, some quarterly kind of monthly kind of check-in calls on 90-day goals. So we're going to add a couple pieces just to kind of test them out until the end of the year, see how that goes in terms of just kind of helping people move forward. But hopefully you're at least once a week jumping on Circle. Would encourage you to be posting in here. Let us know about some different wins. Let us know about ways that we can pray for you. We'll be posting resources in here as well. Okay. So let me set this up. We're going to talk for just a couple minutes on ministry life cycles. And this is actually one of the tools and frameworks that we'll use with leaders as we kind of just help them evaluate and identify where they're at in the life cycle of ministry. And this is an extremely helpful tool. In fact, I did this last week at our quarterly leadership gathering. I ran through this framework with different leaders. We kind of had a dialogue about, hey, where are you at in the life cycle? What do you need to focus in on? What do you need to be aware of? What's kind of the next season? And just kind of talk through some of those pieces. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this hopefully for you. And so I haven't drawn on Circle before. I usually do Zoom, but I think I can do that. So hopefully that should be sharing at this point. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through a couple different things. Number one is I'm going to just help identify the stage of ministry. Okay, here's kind of the stage of ministry. Then I'm going to go through in 4 different areas. What are things that you should be focusing in on and putting some of your time and energy towards? And then also I want to give you kind of the way that it's going to feel when you're in that area. Because sometimes it's not just like what you're focusing on, but there's a certain kind of sense of, man, as you're kind of leading a ministry and beginning to kind of press forward, there's kind of like this intuitive sense of like, man, it just kind of feels like something right now that can somehow times be like an identifier of how to help understand what stage of ministry that you're in. Okay. So here's, I'll walk through the name of the stage. I'll tell you how it's going to feel. Then I'll talk about what are some different kind of like things along the way that you need to focus in on. But when we do that, I want to kind of categorize in 4 different categories. So number 1, I'm going to use the letter V, and that's going to talk about vision, right? So how do you, is this something in terms of vision that we need to focus in on? Number 2 is we're going to talk about R, which is relationships. Like as you think about like just the organization of relationships, like the priority of relationships. Number 3, we're going to talk about this idea of P being programming, right? So actually formalizing some of the things that we're doing within ministry. And then M, which is going to be management. Okay, management. And that's going to be like the systems and the like overseeing people and having some of those kind of pieces in place. Okay. What I'm going to do in this process though is I'm going to use either an uppercase letter or a lowercase letter that is going to indicate really how much focus needs to be in that area, as well as if it begins to diminish, what you'll see on the backside as being one of those areas as well. Okay, so let's walk through these different stages. And so I'm just going to walk through this for a few minutes. Hopefully in this process, you'll begin to identify just kind of where you're at in these different stages that will help you begin to move forward. Okay, so the first stage is really what we call the launch stage, right? So this is at the very beginning. God puts in your heart the concept of a ministry, right? So college young adult ministry, man, we just need to launch this. We need to relaunch this. And what it often feels like at the beginning is what we're going to call early struggle, right? And this can be a church, this can be a ministry, this can be an organization like us, where there's just kind of this sense of like, you need a lot of like kind of momentum and energy to get liftoff, right? So often what you find is this can be a season that feels like a lot of struggle, a lot of pushing, a lot of like energy that's going just somehow to get this thing off the ground, okay? So this is the early struggle. This is how it feels. Now, in this is really in this launch phase, you know, it's really about this idea of a birth of a ministry. What we see is really the primary call or kind of focus area is all around vision. Okay. It's going to be small r for relationships, small p for programming, and small m. So in this stage, it's really around vision, right? So you're beginning to kind of put this in front of people of saying, this is what we want to see happen. This is what we want to get off the ground. This is what we want to launch for the first time, or this is what we want to relaunch as you think about this like energy and early struggle of saying, we need to launch a ministry for the very first time. So some of you on this call might, watching the recording, might say, yeah, this is where we're at. We are in the launch phase. We're in the early struggle phase of getting a ministry. In fact, there's several of you that are part of our network. If you're watching this recording, we've had this conversation about you being in what we call stage 0, right? And stage 0 is some of the things that we need to do in order to launch a ministry. Okay. So that's kind of the first stage. The second stage of ministry is what we're going to call momentum, right? So now that you're beginning to kind of get off the ground, beginning to begin to move, now we're beginning to like, it's not as much like struggle, but now things are beginning to work, right? Things are beginning to move forward. There's this sense where momentum's beginning to build. In fact, Megan, you're on this call. In a lot of ways, I think that you're kind of in this stage of momentum. Now, here's what it feels like. What it feels like, it feels fun, right? So this is an exciting time because you've gone through this phase of early struggle where you're just trying to get the thing off the ground. All of a sudden, momentum begins to build in this, and all of a sudden there's a sense where you're beginning to like move forward as a ministry. Oh, people are showing up. We're planning events and people are enjoying them. People are starting to come over to our house for our missional community. There's a sense where now momentum's beginning to build as you begin to move forward. So in this stage, we talk about, is it still, whoa, that totally like deleted. That was crazy. So there's a sense of, why is it deleting? Hopefully, maybe you can see that. High vision, right? Now what we need to begin to do is actually increase relationships, right? So this actually becomes, we've been kind of primarily moving in vision, but now what we begin to do is begin to think about like, how do we begin to organize relationships? And now all of a sudden, like new people are coming into your home or new people are showing up at events. And we need to say, how are we going to connect with these people for the first time? How do we begin to like invite them into some of the things that we're doing? In this though, is we see that still programming is relatively low. And then we see management as being low as well. And so we're saying we got high vision, got high relationships, that we don't really need to like organize programming all that much because we're just beginning to build some momentum. We don't really need to manage relationships at all because we're not in the sense where there's any formality that needs to be created in this. Okay. So this is the momentum phase. The next one is what we call strategic growth, right? So now we're beginning to like, things are beginning to pick up a little bit, right? And we're beginning to see some significant traction, some significant movement as you begin to think about some growth that happens in this. Is what it begins to feel like is we're going to call this whitewater. And whitewater is where you move beyond kind of the fun portion and it gets to be a little bit chaotic because it's like, oh man, we have a lot of new people coming, right? And we're needing to kind of create some more spaces for those people. And it's not as easy as it used to be. And so there's communication has fallen through the cracks and, you know, maybe not all of your systems are in place and all these different things because this is strategic growth. And in this, what we begin to see is it still has high vision, high relationship. Now we're beginning to kind of emphasize programming, right? So now that we have these relationships that are coming, how are we going to organize those relationships so there's consistent touch points, so there's consistent connections with people? And we want to begin to create that, but in that there's still a limited number of management, not quite the management necessarily that we need within that. So that's the strategic growth section, okay? The top section of this is what we're going to call sustained health. And this is a phase where, man, everything begins to kind of run like clockwork, right? It's beginning to move forward. And so what we see in this is what we're going to call predictable success. And what I mean by that is you understand that the things you're doing are going to create output, right? So the input is going to produce certain outputs because you understand that if we connect with people, if we run these events, if we do a welcome week, if we run a fall retreat, that's going to lead, because we've seen it historically enough, the impact that it's going to begin to have as you begin to think about some of that predictable success. So in this is going to be, and you're probably guessing, right? High vision, high relationship, high programming, high management. Now what we need to begin to do is actually begin to think about, like, how do we systematize some of these things in order to create some of the outputs that we want to see within our ministry. And so this is the top. Okay. Now what happens is, if we're not careful, that what begins to happen is we begin to slide down the backside of this. And what we see in the midst of this is actually the stage of what we're going to call maintenance. So this is the maintenance phase. And what it begins to feel like in this is what we're going to call treadmill. Right. So I don't know if you've ever been a part of a church or ministry. I have, that's been in this maintenance phase. What begins to happen is you understand all the things that you're supposed to do in a month or a week or a year, but it's not having necessarily the same impact, because it's less about like some of the things that you were doing early on and becomes more about the functionality. So what we often begin to see in this stage is actually, I don't know why it keeps deleting on me. So actually vision begins to diminish. We still have high relationships, high programming, high management, but what begins to slip is vision. Right. So now you're doing things, relationships are happening, programming is happening, management is happening. But what begins to diminish is vision of saying, this is why we're doing these things, to go in a certain direction. And now we're just doing things to do things. Okay. So that's the next stage. The next one after the maintenance stage is what we're going to call preservation. The preservation phase. And in this, what it begins to feel like is we're going to talk about like what we call the big rut, right? Man, I've been in a church that's been in the stage before, and it's interesting where primarily the focus becomes preservation, right? It becomes like the sense where we just want to like keep things moving forward and begin to maintain what we had rather than moving things forward. So what happens is you have low vision, low relationship, but primarily all you have is program and management. Like program and management are the things that drive things. Now the thing that is deteriorating is actually the relational stickiness within the ministry that ultimately begins to move downward. Okay. The last stage here is what we're going to call life support. And the life support is basically the way that what it feels is, we're going to call it death rattle, right? So there's a sense where you're kind of knocking on the door and you realize that the end is inevitable, right? So you move in this where it actually low vision, low relationship, low programming, and it all becomes management at this point, right? You're actually just like organizing and managing things, managing just budgets and like whatever. And you're just kind of sliding towards the last kind of part of that is really death, right? So this is death, where the ministry actually begins to no longer exist. So now here's the thing in this, and this is what we talked about. So a lot of times for college ministries or young adult ministries, right, what we'll see is, let me get a highlighter here, is what we see is a lot of times kind of on this side of the life cycle, right? But some of us can be a part of churches that are actually on the backside of this life cycle. Now, here's what we talk about is in this, the challenge is as you begin to slide down the backside, right? What you can do at that point is actually begin to create kind of a new vision life cycle, right? Where now vision becomes the thing that's interjected, and you begin to actually move your way up into a brand new life cycle. Now, here's the challenge, and I talk about this all the time, and I've had people call me and talk to me about this, that the further that you are, say you're down in preservation or life support, at that point, the momentum of that backside is beginning to increase, that it takes significantly more momentum actually to break out of that life cycle than it would is if you were up here. Right. So if you're at the top and you need to create a new life cycle, it's pretty easy to just infuse a new vision when you're at the top of the curve and to begin to move into a new life cycle. But the further you are on the backside, the more energy that it actually takes in order to move into a new vision life cycle. Okay. So here's what I want to say is I think that there is value in this. Number one is we need to identify where we're at in the ministry life cycle, right? We actually need to begin to identify, this is where I'm at, this is where our ministry's at, because what that allows us to do is in the midst of the vision relationship programming management to identify, to make sure we're actually not putting energy into the wrong areas. So if you're at the bottom of launch, you actually should not be putting a whole lot of energy into management. You should not be putting a whole lot of energy into programming, right? It's primarily vision. And you understand that the next kind of stage is what is going to need to increase with vision is not program or management, it's actually relationship, right? So what that allows you to do is understand, number one, this is where I'm at in the process, where our ministry is at. Here's the things we can focus in on. But what it also allows us to do is actually begin to look ahead and say, in the next season, here's what we're going to have to focus in on, right? Here's some of the things that we're going to have to do. Here's some of the things that we're going to have to lean in towards as we begin to move forward. So here's what I'd love for you to do. One is to understand, first of all, where you're at. Where does your energy and your focus need to go? Right. Secondly, as you think about the next stage, what do you need to be kind of cognizant of as you think about some of the kind of the future of what is need to be infused into the next stage of ministry? Because that can begin to help you understand of like, okay, we're not at programming right now, but we recognize that as we're upping the relationship, the next thing that we're going to need to do is actually begin to focus on programming even a little bit more. Okay. So that is the ministry life cycle framework that we utilize all the time. In fact, I'm always even thinking about this on calls or when I'm with different people. One is to recognize, hey, where's your ministry at? For some people, it's to help them recognize where their church is at. I'll get often people, lead pastors of churches. I talked to a guy in just outside of San Antonio. He was a part of a restart, came into a dying church, help him identify where he at in the life cycle, right? So that he can begin to see that and say, okay, what we need to do is actually re-infuse vision into creating a new life cycle as well. So hopefully that was helpful for you. Wanted to put that training out as you begin to, as a resource for y'all, whether you're watching the recording for Megan, who's live here. Just hope that is a helpful tool and framework for you guys to think about as you think about your ministry. Just a quick reminder, got office hours happening this week. We'll be doing some quarterly goal calls as well. Make sure you do that. And we'll also have some of our partners coming in over the next several months, and they're going to be jumping on Circle here and doing some training. So those are people who are a part of our quarterly gathering, which fun kind of side facts for some of you. We're actually in Q4, we're going to break into 2 because the room's getting so big. So we're going to break into 2 quarterly gatherings, which we're really excited about. And so we're pressing forward on that as well. Okay. So hopefully that was helpful today. I just want to jump on for a few minutes, a little bit longer than I thought it was going to be, about 25 minutes here. But I think that's it for today. We'll catch you on another call at some point down the road or face-to-face at an event. Oh, yeah, a reminder. We got a Foundations Intensive happening in Portland, Oregon in November. So make sure you be a part of that. One of the best spaces that we provide. So get there. Okay. Talk to you guys later. See you. Bye.